Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Shine Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Shine Hills at shinehills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
We are across the street and around the world. Shine Hills.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. And today's special featured guest is Kasey Orr.
Hello.
And Kasey, it's good to have you. So you probably spent way more time with me than you probably wanted to, but we were kind of stuck in airports for the last, planes,
trains, and automobiles.
Really, from here to New York and back. And I didn't think we were going to make it back.
I just got or not make it back as soon as we did was kind of a miracle. Most people were still sleeping in that airport until Saturday.
Yeah.
So if you guys heard about the big storm on the East Coast, I know it affected New York, all three of those airports, but I think it affected some other places too. And literally hundreds of flights were canceled. Literally thousands of people were stranded at those three New York airports and the airports where they had otherwise come from. We got dumped off in Harrisburg, Virginia, because the storm was in between Denver and New York.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the adventure. But yeah, so we got to spend some time, but it was totally worth it because we did get to spend some time with Brandon Nimmo.
We did, and it was an awesome time, and we kind of got delayed, and it ended up being perfect, and we ended up going to we were going to go to the game on Monday. We went to the game, I believe it was on Tuesday,
where he hit two
home runs
consecutively.
It was awesome.
In consecutive innings. And I actually I'm trying to look I just got my Google showed me like, hey, you had a lot going on last week, and gave me a little rundown, and it was like 3,000 air miles, like 500 car miles, 3.5 hours on a train, however many miles that was, and we walked 4 miles that it counted.
It was unbelievable. Well, let's tell everybody what we were doing. We had to do the Suffering for Jesus because somebody had to do it. Yeah. No, the FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, wanted to have an interview with Brandon Nimmo.
Yep.
And give him a shout out because Karsten set up, he was kind of the initiator of bringing FCA to the University of Wyoming.
Yeah, for the first time.
For the first time, they had 480 students there.
Kids.
They had a phenomenal camp. I mean, it just was amazing.
And that was all over Wyoming and a couple northern Colorado,
I think so, but mostly Wyoming kids.
Mostly Wyoming kids,
so
and that's cool.
Kudos to Karsten for launching that, and it was just a great event. And then, so we captured, you actually did the video. I just kind of watched you work. You did a fabulous job of interviewing Brandon in a short amount of time and got a lot of content in that, but edited it down to
enough because we missed our plane.
Well, that's true, but the interview was great.
Yep, he's great. He's a pro. Like, he was able to sometimes, like, you had some questions, I had some questions. My questions tend to be like 3 minutes long, and he was able to like just answer like and concise and knew exactly what I was trying to get.
Spot on.
And answered it. And he was just, the easy part was he got to just be Brandon Nimmo, because as we got to see for those couple of days being a little bit around him, he's a guy who, when some other players don't stop at the people who are waiting at the gate on the way out, he stopped both nights we were there. He took pictures with them and talked to him. One gal always runs up and gives him a hug, and they're talking about her trip to Barbados or whatever.
Or something, yeah.
He's a personable guy, a good Christian example. He is nice off the field, on the field.
Unbelievable. So there's a guy, remember the security guard that's been there 18 years, real nice guy. Albert, there you go. And we were chatting at him, as we were waiting for Brandon to come out, and you asked him a question. He said something about,
I've been here 18 years.
Some of these players aren't that nice to the people or something. Yeah, some are kind of rude. And so you asked, well, who's the nicest guy you've ever
the nicest player? And he's like, he thought about it for a second. Yeah. And I don't know if he knew we were there to see Brandon, but he was like, probably Brandon is one of the nicest guys ever. And I said, are you saying that because we're here? He said, oh, no, it's just hands down. And then I asked, well, who was the meanest? Yeah. And he said, well, I don't know who's listening right now.
Yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't answer. Yeah, Albert was cool.
But Brandon was the real deal. Our hometown boy, you can be very, very proud of his performance on the field and off the field. One of the questions you asked him, I didn't mean for this to be all about Brandon. We're going to get to the content in a second. But one of the questions you asked him, I really liked. And because I asked him, he always he kind of pumps his chest and he points to the sky whenever he hits a ball or gets on base or whatever. And he said that at that moment, all the attention's on him, and he wants to do everything to glorify God. And he feels like that's one way of him just pointing the glory back to God,
redirecting, making sure and doing it like visibly so the cameras usually catch it. And
I thought it was a cool explanation of his just trying to little things to glorify God. The other thing that was cool is his walk-up song. We had Kane. You remember Kane? Yeah. They came here. That was that band that, and they have this song, I'm so blessed,
which we did. So we've had 2 series based on their songs. We had had a blessed series.
Yep.
And a Easter a couple years ago, we did their Rise Up.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And so he has "I'm So Blessed" as his walkout song.
Okay, and some of the content. So there was a time, I don't know if there was kind of a timeout, but he was walking up.
They did a mound visit as he was coming up.
Okay, so that song just kept going, didn't it?
Yep.
And it was like, on my best day, I'm a child of God. On my worst day, I'm a child of God. Every day.
Yeah, it's a good day, and you're the reason why.
It was amazing.
And he said, and that's what he was said in the interview. He's like, well, it's just one of those chances you have to let people know who you are,
right?
But also, evangelize a little bit. Here's a song that's talking about God, and he says it's on for about 5-8 seconds, but that's 5 at bats.
Yeah.
So maybe 20-30 seconds a game.
That's true.
And hopefully, he said, if people see him and like him as a player, they'll go like, well, what's this walk? What is that song? And look into it, and maybe that's their first step. And he said, those little things you can do to wave that to say, I am who I am, and that person is a Christian. And if you're interested in who I am, then you'd be interested in this.
Right. So we went back to capture that for FCA, but we had some video we wanted to catch for our own youth and for our own church. And so we've got several things that probably 30 minutes of stuff that we'll be able to use at different clips. But he just, man, what a pro. I mean, he just did a fabulous job on the field. He did a fabulous job off the field, and a
gracious host, a kind, generous human being. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
So one of the things that we talked about actually in some of our conversations is this being fruitful. All right. Yeah. And to transition, we're going to go into a series about the fruits of the Spirit.
Yep.
Right. And the fruit of the Spirit. And I want to go through that in a second because I know you've memorized the fruits of the Spirit, and I want you to talk about it.
Well, I thought it was kind of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Like everyone should know how to say that, but I couldn't say those out of order. It's like LMNOP.
Okay, so how did you do it? I thought this was good. People can.
So I kind of pieced them together, and some of them are kind of I thought of them in different categories. But then I realized also there's 3 groups of 3. The first 3 are 1 syllable. The second 3 are 2 syllables, and the last 3 are 3 syllables. So there's love, joy, peace,
right?
Patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control.
Right.
See, so I'm still doing. I was just figured this out this morning. I'm working on it, but that makes it easy because then I looked and I could say, okay, love, joy, patience. Oh no, wait, that's 2 syllables. I missed one. And so that's
love, joy, peace, patience, kindness.
That's a weird ADD.
Oh, that's really good.
But what's cool is so you ended one of your last sermons from the previous series. You talked about fruitfulness, and how Jesus wants fruitfulness.
Sure.
And in Matthew 18, when he come out and that fruit didn't have any, or that tree didn't have any fruit on it,
right.
So he caused it to wither. He said, "You're useless."
Right.
And so Karsten last week happened to be talking about Galatians 5:13, which is we are called the freedom brothers. So that take care and encourage each other. And then it's just a couple verses later where he talks about the fruit of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
And that's the next series. And I just thought that was fun that all that just kind of has fallen into place like that.
Great walk-up lead for that. That's awesome. Well, I want to go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 22, because there's what God gives the directive. He says to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
The very first thing he says, be fruitful. Right. And so,
and multiply. So I think I just never thought about that be fruitful doesn't necessarily mean multiply.
No,
be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And so this fruitfulness is what we can do regardless of the economy, regardless of the weather conditions, or regardless of, where we're at in our life. We can be fruitful. We can love, have joy, peace. And it says against such things, there is no law. It's like there's, if you do these things, there's no law anywhere that's going to say, okay, stop loving, stop being joyful, stop hoping, and so stop being faithful. And so these are the fruits. These are things that there's nothing that can really touch these things that you produce. And so I think as a church, as individuals in the church, we need to be looking. And so we're going to be looking at this really for the next July and August.
9. We're doing a week for every fruit.
Every one of them. So not in the order that you memorize them, though.
I noticed that. The first thing, and it bothered our graphic designer. I was like, oh, that's almost in order. And he says, what? I'm like, well, Joy, I'm in peace and patience are swapped around. I said, so the people who come the third week for peace are going to have patience.
They're going to have patience.
But it bothered him because he likes things in order. He's a very orderly guy.
My gosh, that's
we
funny.
made him make a thing that the acronym was kapow, but it's with a C. It's an onomatopoeia. I thought it didn't matter. He's like, but it's spelled with a K.
He couldn't do it. Huh?
I know. He said, but it's spelled with a K. Yeah. So anyway, so he's going to have some trouble with the order, but it's because we have guests.
Yes. So some guests and we got some good guests. I want to promote them. So Keith Couch, we know him, and he's going to preach. I had him choose the one, and he said, or maybe he said choose for me, and I said, okay, well the next one up is Joy. So he got Joy. He got assigned to him, but Karsten is going to preach one of them, and he picked. I think he picked patience. Like how
I'm going to give him.
How
that
foolish
line.
Is that to pick patience to preach on? You know, God's going to work that into his soul. That's going to be tough. And then Kenny White is going to come back. He's preaching at God's Mighty Men.
Yep.
Or speaking, and then he's here that weekend, so we're going to have him preach on the 27th of August.
Is that was he gentleness?
Gentleness, and I had him pick whichever one he wanted. I said, pick your fruit of the Spirit, and that's what he said. So,
and that's one reason we ended up. So if that doesn't make sense with the title of the series, we called it Jukebox because the idea was we knew we were going to have a bunch of people who were available to speak, including Kenny, which is kind of a cool cameo appearance.
Yeah.
And then. So we thought about let's do the fruit, and then they can just pick what they want. And so it's kind of like a jukebox. You go up and you pick your favorite that you get to talk about.
Pick your fruit.
Pick your fruit.
Oh man, look at you, man. You're just like
I've been stumbling into puns. You should have heard before. I was like talking about pairing the fruits together in threes, and
you're quite the punster. You don't even know it. That's like I'm sitting there having to listen to you. It's like
normally
that's
completely intentional. It's just been. I kind of feel like it's getting.
Well,
away
you're
from
still
me.
in jet lag. That's why.
Yeah, that's why. I'm still a little bit in New York. I took the trash to the curb this morning, and we do that on Tuesdays because yesterday was the first day we were back in time to be able to actually go to work.
Okay, so we got to say this one story. So we had to get a train, planes, trains, automobiles. We had a Uber from 4-hour Uber from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to New York
to Brooklyn.
Yeah. That was crazy. That's a crazy deal. Had a lot of people that went with us, and it was just random
people from all over.
It was really cool. Well, then we actually took a train from New York to Providence because you were in line saying, a long line.
A long line. And the people who were walking away were saying,
angry.
Saturday.
Right.
And
Saturday.
This was Tuesday.
Right.
It was like the first flights they had available were not till Saturday.
So you were just on your phone and you said, well, we could get a train to Providence, Rhode Island, and we can get a flight out on Thursday morning. And it's like,
and my wife
you
happens
were amazing.
to be she happened to be at a conference. So I was like, oh, we could go by and have dinner with her and then get on a plane home.
It worked perfectly, and we got back home, but still a little bit of jet lag, I would say, for sure. So I'll give you a little bit of break on your sharpness here. So do you, just diving in, do you have now that you memorize the fruits of the Spirit, do you have one that's, I don't know, kind of resonating with you? It seems like in different seasons of life when I go through.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I've preached through the 7 churches of Revelation, and each time I go through, it's like, I kind of resonate with this church right now, or another. And I think the same way with the fruits of the Spirit, as I go through, it's like, I think God's kind of working on this one for me. Is there one like that for you? Kind of hitting you cold here.
I think patience is always one. I struggle with, and I think the patience, the word for patience is kind of more of an endurance, is that being able to endure a situation for a long period of time. And with that, I'm okay with, but sometimes having to wait for something to happen or to be developing stuff like right now, I'm only a handful of years back into my walk, and I'm you've seen me, I'm hungry about the word.
Yeah,
I want to get in there, but I want to know it all now. I'm one of those people. So that's kind of, to me, to be methodical and go through, like when we were going through Galatians and realizing, oh, this actually connects that and this, and then reading through the fruit of the flesh and being like, oh, that's, convicting, not that one, but convicting.
Yeah, we probably should read through those. There's a lot of the fruits of the flesh.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting is that the fruit of the flesh outweighs the fruit of the spirit.
Right. There's a whole bunch of lists. Yeah.
We can find a lot of ways to mess up, but I mean, that's what Jesus said, the path is narrow. Like it's a narrow door.
Okay, so before you read that, I'm gonna give you some kudos because I got to see. Well, I don't know which one's from mine right now. I think patience is always one of those. It's probably I always need to work on. I go through that one and go, I'm not sure if I'm, or gentleness. I would say the first one that really God showed me that when I knew that I was a real believer is I saw gentleness come up in my life. Went from, I don't know, a low number to a over 500 kind of number.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know God did it. Because as I was thinking, this was back when I was in my early 20s and I recommitted my life to Christ, and I could tell you my gentleness quotient was not good.
Yeah.
I was explosive. I was quick temper. I was all that. And I recommitted my life, and I was really working on this whole anger and all that stuff, and really committing it to God. And I will tell you, there's things that I would think, wow, even a month ago, I would have lost my cool over that. Yeah. And it's like, now I'm just like, it's no big deal, or it's okay, or whatever. And it's like, to me, it's like there was this gentleness that God was doing. It was even transcended my own desire and ability to do on my own.
Well, and that's outbursts of anger. I don't think if it says that this way. It does in the NASB. It says outbursts of anger. Is one of the flesh. That's one of the easy. I think it's one of the easiest.
For sure. And
anger is such an interesting emotion too. Some people think of it as a secondary emotion. It's actually something that happens in reaction to other things. If you're physically hurt, emotionally hurt, or afraid, it's usually when you get scared. Yeah. Or it's usually when you get angry.
Sure. Anger is fear in disguise.
Yeah. That's someone cuts you off in traffic. Part of that is like, you're driving kind of crazy. You could hurt me. I'm kind of scared that you whatever, or even emotionally hurt that you don't care about me. Yeah. And those things anyway. But anger, I think, is such an easy one, but there's a lot.
Well, let me go before you read it.
Yeah.
So I got to see I got to see an ex-military guys. I've always said this. I always like taking military guys to the mission field, because one time every time they've gone with me, and I've always tell them, it's like, you guys are amazing. You never complain. You always help out. You're just on this whole idea of service mode, and if plans don't go like we had planned them, you're just like, okay, that's part of the plan. It's like you just roll. I don't know what your training is, but there's something that the military does. And we were even talking about
this. They don't do it on purpose. It's not something. Yeah, no. When you load onto a C-130 to go from Kuwait to Baghdad 3 times in the same day, 8 hours apart.
Oh wow!
Because they're like, oh, never mind, this wasn't the one, or oh, hey, you know what, we forgot to do blah blah blah. So, or someone didn't sign something, so get back off and go sit on the tarmac for another couple hours.
You just are conditioned.
Yep. Here we go.
Okay, here we go.
Right, well, we'll get there.
Well, okay, so we had a whole bunch of opportunities to lose it, right? Seriously.
For sure. Oh yeah.
Every turn is like, well, this didn't work out. Everybody was. There was people. There was some hot New York around us, and not that we were like perfect. We were. It was stressful. No, it was like, oh my gosh,
there was not a complete lack of grumbling.
There was some grumbling and all that, but I just thought, man, and I told you this later. It's like, I just so appreciate, your training, your military, but I think God's part in this too. It's like, okay, well, whatever. Well, what about a train? Okay, well, let's try that. It's going to take us 4 hours, whatever. And it's like this, whatever it takes kind of mentality and attitude was, this trip we went on could have been really, really bad. Yeah. And it turned out God used everyone. We talked about this later. I don't know if we can work this into a podcast. Yeah. But God used every one of those delays, and we had a better trip and a better interview and everything was better as a result of those delays. Yeah. And it's like, you just look back and say, I think God's hand was in all of that. And I'm really glad we didn't freak out in the midst of it.
And that's one of the things too, is where that balance that I'm still have been working on is knowing that, like, okay, he didn't make the storm so that we could have a better interview.
No.
trap thousands of people in a couple of airports so that we could have a bit. But
he knew it was going to happen.
When you're going through and you're doing this stuff for God, if you kind of trust and are patient, like he will make it work out. Like you said, what you meant for evil, God will use for the good.
That's it,
or
boy.
God works everything for the good.
It's really true. And I just wish we could really get into all the details of that, but it was really true. God really honored and used this thing. So, this trip and this whole thing. And so I think we exercised several fruits and had opportunities to do a lot of things wrong. Let's read the flesh side.
So he's going through, and he had just talked about trying not to be slave. He's telling these guys who are getting the Judaizers were around, so they're trying to work them back into the law, the capital L Mosaic law, and make that the thing. And he's trying to get them
too much grace. We've got to get back to the law and be more Jewish.
Yeah. And he's trying to in this section, he's trying to say you need to be, your freedom comes from the Spirit, so you need to be in the Spirit, not in the flesh. When he said be free, sorry, I'll hop back real quick for Karsten's for. We are called to freedom, brothers. This is 13. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. So this is the part after that where he's saying, use the Spirit, because the flesh looks like this. Now the works of the flesh are evident. He says, sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalry, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these, which is the other thing he says, and all the stuff like
everything goes with it. You mentioned those are 15 so far, 15 plus.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And without nailing it down. And we're all guilty right now of divisions.
Yeah.
The NASV calls it factions.
Okay.
Kind of splitting into, parties and stuff like that. And what kind of flag you're waving on what month. If you let that cause that enmity and the fits of anger and all this stuff. And I also found out sorcery doesn't necessarily mean weaving magic. It actually was talking about doing drugs. Yeah. So drunkenness. Yeah. But then, I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And so here, the other thing that I like about the NASV, it says who practice such things. Oh, yeah. Which is not just because we all have slip-ups. If we have a fit of anger, it's not like, okay, you're falling from grace now.
Good.
It's practice, which means if you
habitually, right.
Yeah, because if you go into the batting cage once, doesn't mean you practice.
Right.
So now 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh and its passions and desires, which saying that flesh stuff is what's supposed to have died in you when you accepted Jesus. Right. The last one I just like, because I'll finish out chapter 5, which is, if we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step, or in the other version say, walk with the Spirit. Mm-hmm. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, etc. But don't just, if we're gonna be in the Spirit, let's walk that way. Let's do it outwardly so each other can see it. Because they were having all these divisions in the Galatian church and these problems with the people trying to make up new dogmas and stuff.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it comes from a TV program, but I noticed that the way that this person was asking the question was provoking.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It was like the question itself was provoking, and so it's almost accusing, And so it's like when you mention that, it's like not provoking one, but we need to stir one another up to good things, set people up to be, practice good things, and not, I could ask you a question about something, and it's like it could just, it immediately bring up some ire, and it's like, no, that's not what you want to do. It's like you want to try to couch your question or your correction, if that's the case, in a loving, gentle way.
So Isaiah Singh, who is our worship resident, spent some time at Bible college. We got to spend some time at a conference recently, and this is just to say we had a lot of time to talk. And he talked about how they had classes on evangelism and apologetic conversations. Right. And he talked about this is especially when you're having a conversation, I guess, with a believer or a non-believer. there's ways you can talk about it that you are just building a wall for them to not want to hear it. If you sound snide or smug or pedantic or any of that stuff. So there's ways that, and if you're going at someone with love and gentleness and kindness, that's not snide.
Boy, what a great example though. If you're trying to win someone to Christ, you're going to use all those fruits in a way of gentleness and just inviting. And probably the strongest question I ever ask anybody in a presentation of the gospel, explaining that Jesus died for them, that it's not a real gentle thing to say that we're all sinners.
The depravity.
But when you say it, if I say that you're a sinner and say, you're a sinner and you need Jesus, well, that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're all sinners. Yeah. We are at the ground is level at the foot of the cross.
I love that phrase.
And I'll just tell you that, here's what Jesus did for me. I think he can do the same thing with you.
Yep.
Those kinds of, it's inviting and saying, you know what, I think, the Bible says if you just believe in your heart that Jesus died for our sins and God rose him from the grave, you will be saved. And it's like, there's this gentleness of severity of, there's a consequence to that, but the severity of our sin. But when we say, we're all there and here's what God's done this for me, I think he can do it for you. I know he can do it for you. Yeah. That's a gentle way. And I think you're right. Whenever the gospel is a great example because it's like you go out of the way to be extra gentle.
Absolutely. And
the fruits of the Spirit are important in all those things.
Well, and that's why we're going to spend the next 9 weeks talking about it. So if you guys are checking us out, make sure to, if you're on you're on YouTube or on our podcast, make sure you like and subscribe and check out, we have the sermon cast where if you missed the sermon or you just want to go back and listen to it again, we'll have each of the messages, just the message portion in what we call the sermon cast.
Yeah.
And then this is our just normal podcast, and we'll be back. Hopefully, we'll be back in a couple weeks.
I'm so glad you do that because because we were gone. I didn't get to see in real time. I got to see Monday. I think I saw the sermon that Karsten preached, and he just did a fantastic job on freedom. And I had a couple of real sticky illustrations that I just still it's like, that was good stuff. So it's good to have those captured. I appreciate all that you do to capture that, Kasey, and make that possible for us to see. Well, do you want to close us out of here?
Sure. Whether you are fighting your flesh or walking in the Spirit, whatever you do, just make sure to be strong and very courageous.
Yeah, God bless you guys.